Hey guys, this is heyybritny and welcome back to my channel. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about another ad that mentions genetics. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I came across this on Twitter actually, and I had no idea that this was even a thing because I do have an ad blocker on my laptop, which is where I watch basically all of my content, all of YouTube, my TV shows and all of that stuff because I really like having the sound go directly to my hearing aid and it's just a better experience on a laptop. And with the ad blocker, I basically miss all of these commercials, and so I came across this one on Twitter and I knew right away who the guy was. This is Jeremiah from The Summer I Turned Pretty. If you are not familiar with that TV show, this is a TV show that is based on a book by an author named Jenny Han. She's also responsible for the To All the Boys I Loved Before series, and so basically this is a summer show. It comes out every summer, so this kind of makes sense why Jeremiah, or Galvin Casalegno, was picked for this promotion. So obviously I don't really know the details as far as like how he was picked and then how they had the conversations about what they should do in the commercial and all of that stuff, but we do have the final product. So if you have not listened to or watched that commercial, I definitely recommend doing that and then just making sure that you are on the same page as everything that we're going to talk about in this video. So he mentions genetics, but he leads into that by basically playing on and talking up his appearance. So if you look at Galvin or Jeremiah, you notice that he has curly hair. I'm not sure what color his eyes are. They're either blue or green, hazel, something like that. And he also has very tan skin. So I don't know his background, but to me, he looks either Italian or Greek. I think people would say, hey, you look like a Greek guy because that's basically how he looked. And so he has the look of somebody who would have been in the Abercrombie and Fitch ads back in the early 2000s. This is a guy who looks like a model. He has great looks. Now, I'm not someone who usually says, hey, you have great genes. I may say, hey, you have good looks or you look good, whatever. He's definitely somebody that 90% of women would find attractive unless you're just not into that type of guy. So anyway, getting into Jeremiah / Galvin. So in this ad, he's basically like, hey, I didn't ask to be the king of summer. He's the king of summer because he's on a TV show that comes out every summer, and the show is starting its 3rd season. And so this totally makes sense. This coincides with the premiere of season 3 for The Summer I Turned Pretty. So he mentions his tan. He talks about genetics, that he basically is genetically gifted with this tan. So I find that super interesting as well. And then he mentions a golden summer. So he's basically just talking about the summer, the sun, golden, having a tan, all of that stuff. And then he also mentions a color analysis. And I don't know how many people would know what a color analysis is, but it's basically a way of finding out which colors complement your features, your skin, your hair color, all of that stuff. So it's about finding colors that make you look good. And so for him, anything gold is basically going to make him look good. And if you're not clear on what this ad is for, it is an ad for Dunkin Donuts. I know that I mentioned them in my last video when I was talking about marketing and all of that stuff, and things or ads that made me want to buy something. So I thought it was interesting that this is for a Dunkin Donuts commercial. I am a Starbucks girl, so I don't go to Dunkin Donuts that often anymore, but I do like that they have more flavors that Starbucks doesn't always have. And I also don't drink any of the refreshers from Starbucks or Dunkin'. So this ad doesn't really appeal to me, but I can see like what they're trying to do with this ad. They're trying to get people to buy their refreshers. Alrighty, so let's get into the rest of the episodes. Jeremiah / Galvin G. So he is basically really hot right now because he is on a popular show, The Summer I Turned Pretty, and he titled himself as the King of Summer. So I actually tried to Google and figure out who else could be considered the King of Summer because I really don't watch a lot of TV shows to notice trends like this. So I don't know, other than Outer Banks, I don't know of another summer TV show that has been out consecutive years to where they're building up a fan base and they would be able to earn that title of King of Summer. So obviously this is a guy that everybody finds hot, they find attractive. He is on a TV show that is actively airing and all of that stuff, and he's getting a lot of attention and hype and a lot of opportunity. I don't know who else could be considered the King of Summer from that aspect, but the only other person that I can think of is his co-star, and that's the guy who plays Connor. So I don't know the actor who plays Connor. I don't know his real name. Christopher Burney is the guy who plays Conrad from The Summer I Turned Pretty. He easily could be called the King of Summer as well, just because everyone compares him to Leo DiCaprio because he looks exactly like him, especially in the Titanic movies and all of that stuff. So again, I don't know who else I would consider for King of Summer, but in this ad, I think it totally makes sense when you consider the TV show that he comes from. Summer is literally in the title of the TV show, and he just fits that beachy surfer vibe that they are going for in this commercial, as far as being out in the sun and getting a tan and enjoying how your body looks and all of that stuff. So I also was very intrigued by him mentioning his tan, because I know that people talk about culture appropriation, and they talk about how with Sydney Sweeney and all of the stuff with blue hair and blonde eyes, they were talking about Black women wearing blonde weaves, having blue contacts and all of that stuff. And so they were saying, well, hey, is that cultural appropriation? Because we talk about it in reverse, with saying that white people who do things that are nowadays typically associated with Black people, we consider that cultural appropriation. So for example, if a white woman were to wear cornrows, we would say, hey, you're appropriating Black culture. So I thought it was interesting that in this sense, it was talking about a tan meaning darker skin. Now, this is not as dark as what we typically associate with people of color, but he is talking about having a little bit of a tint to your skin. We're not talking about someone who is pale white. So in that sense, I think he looks completely different from Sydney Sweeney, because she's a little bit more pale. She looks a little bit more Nordic than he does, if that makes sense. And so I am wondering how people are going to receive him talking about having a tan, because we do make fun of white people for wanting to have darker skin or actively trying to tan their skin, because the joke is, hey, you're trying to make yourself look more Black or whatever because you want darker skin. And so I'm wondering how that is going to play over if people are talking about this commercial. Now, what I found interesting, again, I don't see a lot of commercials because of the ad blocker that I have on, but I have not seen a lot of talk about this particular commercial. I did see a little bit of traction, but I don't think it's going to be as big as the Sydney Sweeney thing. And I don't know if it's because, one, we're talking about a attractive woman versus an attractive male. What is the kind of driving factor here? Is it that we are promoting two white people? Is it that we are just promoting a white woman? Because again, I don't think there is as much backlash with this ad from Jeremiah or Galvin G with Dunkin Donuts as we are seeing with American Eagle. And interestingly, with the backlash for Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle, it's mainly women, in my opinion, who are being very vocal about this and saying, hey, you guys are basically making it more difficult for us to feel attractive or good about ourselves because you guys are saying that this is a standard. I don't necessarily agree with that. They're just trying to sell a pair of jeans, and I do have more thoughts on that, but I am seeing mostly women criticizing American Eagle for their choice of having Sydney Sweeney as the face of this campaign, and then also the reference to good jeans. Now, I don't know if men are going to come out now that Galvin G had this opportunity in Dunkin Donuts and their commercial. I don't know if it's going to be men coming out and saying, hey, you're giving this white boy all of this attention. This could have been someone of color. I just don't see men taking the time to do that, like men who are secure in themselves and don't really care about this sort of thing. I don't see them making a big fuss about it. They're just probably going to say, hey, there's this pretty white boy in this ad, whatever. We don't take it seriously, that sort of thing, because there is this stereotype of pretty boys being soft, and so I don't feel that a secure, masculine, dominant man or whatever is going to feel threatened by this pretty boy. Like, they laugh at pretty boys. So I think that is super interesting as well, because I really just don't think there's going to be the same amount of backlash as what we are seeing with Sydney Sweeney. I am interested to see how women are going to react to this and what their initial thoughts are, because if you are attracted to a guy because of how he looks, I can't really see people also complaining about the fact that he has been given this opportunity, because if you are attracted to him and you are intrigued or you're interested and the ad commercial has caught your attention, I don't understand what you would be complaining about in that sense. And there is the flip of, hey, you are saying this is the standard, this is the beauty standard that women have to meet, and then now you have something that women should be attracted to, and those same women can't complain when they're the ones who are attracted to the person who is in the commercial this time around. While I was writing my notes for this video, something that hit me was how this is connected to a lot of things that are happening. So we have Sydney Sweeney getting a lot of backlash with the American Ego campaign. We have this new campaign from Dunkin Donuts and Galvin Casalegno. And then we also have some other stuff happening outside of kind of like actors. So we have Caitlin Clark, who's getting a lot of negative attention for being the face of the WNBA. We do have a lot of talented Black women who are the face of the WNBA or who have helped make the WNBA what it is. There are a lot of talented women who could have been given the attention and the opportunities that Caitlin Clark had, but they also had their time. You know what I mean? They are older. Some of them are older, more established and veterans of the WNBA, whereas Caitlin is a new player. She's fresh in the league, she's a rookie. She should have her time to get her opportunity that these other women would have had when they first came into the league. And so what I find interesting amongst these three different examples that I've talked about, Sydney Sweeney, Galvin G, and then also Caitlin Clark, we also have Paige B from UConn, Buckers, if I'm saying her last name correctly. She's a little bit different. I think that she gets a lot of attention because she was a great player from UConn, and this is her rookie season in the WNBA. I don't hear as much about her as I do with Caitlin Clark. However, Paige is in a different category because she acts more Black. So I feel like that's going to be a different standard there, because if you have someone who's white and appeals to a white audience, they are going to get a different reaction versus someone who is white but is more Black acting, or they just seem more hip and more with it, as the Black community would say. And so I think that is going to be received differently because she's making an effort to fit in or to identify with the Black community. So in other words, this would just be like Eminem and the hip hop community. He has integrated himself into the Black community that way. He's not some preppy white boy who detests Black culture but is still profiting off of it by doing rap music. I find that super interesting because you have three white people who appeal to other white people versus just one person. Yes, Paige can still appeal to white people, but she also has that instant connection to the Black community just because of how she carries herself, her mannerism, and the fact that she does have a Black stepmother and a half Black stepbrother. So those are just some interesting things to think about. The other thing that came to mind as I was working on this episode is, when was the last time that we saw a white woman get a lot of attention for all of the commercials, ads, and campaigns that she was doing? The answer to this, in my opinion, is Ariana Maddox from Vanderpump Rules. So this was the last time where we allowed a white woman to get a lot of attention, to make a lot of money based on something that happened on a TV show. In my opinion, I don't agree with everything that was handled as far as Ariana Maddox. I do believe that she, from what I've seen on the show, I don't know this factually, but just from what I've seen on the show, she was the side chick who became the main chick, and then she basically got karma, and because we felt bad for her, we gave her all of this attention, we gave her all of this money. And when I say we, I mean fans as far as supporting her, and then businesses just throwing themselves at her feet to give her different business opportunities. And so this was, even though she did get some backlash because people thought that this wasn't deserved and all of this stuff, we did give her those opportunities. And so that, in my opinion, was the last time that we allowed a white woman to successfully basically take over the cameras and be everywhere. And I don't know why that was okay. Is it okay that we platform white women when we feel sorry for them? And you can say that we did the same thing with campaigns to promote diversity and to show more people of color in ads and commercials, that sort of thing. Is it because of everything that happened with George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter that we felt sorry for the Black community? We felt that we had to do things to make up for things that had happened in the past, and that's why it was okay. Whereas now with Sydney Sweeney, we're not really giving her sympathy, we're not really apologizing for anything. This is just her basically getting the bag. And so I think because there's not that type of story associated with her, I know that there's controversy as far as like her family, their political affiliations, and MAGA and all of that stuff. So there's that missing element of sympathy here. And I think that is why in this situation, we're not happy about a white woman being platformed, because there isn't some tragic story or something that we feel like we have to apologize for and help support this person. So I just found that super interesting, because with everything that happened with Ariana Maddox and her getting all of that attention and all of those opportunities, this also indirectly signaled, hey, it's okay to platform white people. You can give them opportunities and the public is going to receive it well. So I'm not surprised that people are receiving Sydney Sweeney well, because of the fact that we've already established that this is okay. Now, going back to the Dunkin Donuts ad with Galvin G and everything with Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle. So I did notice that both commercials, they reference genetics. Obviously with jeans, the play on jeans is a little more acceptable, because that just makes sense. That's probably the first pun that you think of when you're talking about jeans. Whereas in Dunkin Donuts and Galvin G's case, there is really no point or no need to mention genetics. So I am super curious about whether or not we're going to see more commercials coming out where people are mentioning genetics, because what I am curious about is I'm sure that all of these different industries are looking into marketing trends, and they're looking at data to figure out how they can put forth the best campaign for their company. And what was it that they were seeing that said, hey, we need to start talking about genetics, we need to appeal to people using these different terms, right? And so yes, we've always used people's looks and sexuality to sell things, but what is it that is making everyone verbally reference genetics in these ads? So I'm super curious to see what the next commercial, the next ad is going to be that references genetics. And then maybe at that point I can say, hey, we're onto something here. Why are we talking about genetics quite in this way? But as of right now, I think it's totally fine that Sydney Sweeney is getting her opportunities. The next girl is going to come around and get her opportunities, whether she's another white girl or a person of color. And the same thing with Dunkin Donuts and Galvin G. I have not seen him in a commercial before, again, because of my ad blocker. So I'm really excited to see him get his opportunities and his moments. He should be a model. He looks like a model. So I don't think there's any reason to be upset that we are platforming two attractive people. Now, speaking of ads and commercials and marketing tactics by companies, what exactly are we, the consumer, expecting to see when we watch a commercial on TV, on our laptops, that sort of thing? So for example, if we have 5 well-known established jean brands having marketing campaigns, having commercials, are we expecting to see a person of color in all 5 companies' commercials? 2 out of 5? 3 out of 5, 5 out of 5, what are the numbers that are acceptable to the general public to say, hey, you guys have made a valid attempt to show diversity in your commercials? I don't think there's anything wrong with, if there's 5 companies that are selling jeans, I don't think all 5 have to have people of color or show diversity in their commercials. If one person does it, great, that's cool, but it also has to be done in an organic way. You can't just put someone, a person of color, in your commercials, in your ads, just to fill a quota. It has to be authentic, that it has to be someone who actively engages with your brand and would be wearing your brand or using your brand if it wasn't for them being paid to promote your product. And so I think it's super important to make sure that if you do have diversity in your ads and your commercials and your campaign, it has to feel authentic. And to give an example of this, so these are early 2000s brands, just because I'm not as hip to fashion anymore, but back in the day we had FUBU and Rocawear. Those were streetwear brands. Those were considered more urban. They were mainly for people of color, and so it would make no sense if there was a white person who was the face of one of those companies, because you would assume that it would just naturally be a black person just because of who created those brands, who they marketed to, and that sort of thing. Now, that does not mean that white people can't wear FUBU or they can't wear rockaware, but it's an exception to the rule. It's meant for black people, but other people can wear it. But when you are promoting your product, you want to show the people who you want to wear your product the most, because I think it's totally fine if you are marketing something for black people and then it's only white people who end up wearing it. That just means you need to adjust your marketing strategy going forward. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having a particular fan base or client base that you want to market to. And then if you get people outside of that, great. You should be happy with that. You shouldn't really care who is buying your product. But from a marketing standpoint, it is important to know who your audience is and to make sure that it's authentic, whatever you do as far as ads, commercials, and campaigns. Alrighty, so to wrap up this episode, I'm super curious to see what's going to happen over the next 6 months with advertising. Are we only going to see white people platform for major ad campaigns, commercials, that sort of thing? Or are we going to get little variations? Is it going to be specific companies who are committed to diversity and inclusion, even if it's not their target audience? Or are they going to switch it up and platform different people? How is all of that going to work? I'm not really sure what the next 6 months look like, but I am super interested in if we are going to continue to see ads and commercials where people are referencing genes, DNA, and all of that stuff, and what the broader goal of all of that is. Obviously, people are talking about eugenics and all of that stuff. I don't really think that if someone thinks a white girl looks good, that means that I don't look good, and that sort of thing. I really think it's a self-confidence sort of thing. I know that that's probably a very high school thing to think, oh, this boy complimented that girl, he didn't compliment me, so that means that I'm ugly. That just means that wasn't your moment, that wasn't your time. So I think it's really important to make sure that we are confident in ourselves and how we look. We don't need the media or marketing campaigns to tell us how we should feel about ourselves. So I think that is super important. That should be happening in the homes. Your parents should be reinforcing that and instilling that self-confidence in you. They should be making you feel good for however you look, whether it's your hair, your eyes, your weight, your skin color, whatever. That should come from your parents and your family. That should not be reinforced through the television, celebrities, and all of that stuff. So yeah, that is my thoughts on everything with Sydney Sweeney, Galvin G, and a few other people that I mentioned. I'm not sure if you guys agree with anything that I've said in this video, but definitely let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.